Hi there, I'm Clifford, and I'm here today to continue something I discussed in a previous video. That is the difference between economic rule and political rule. In that other video, I basically explained the origins of the variations of rule within a household and the conception of the household. And I make the differentiation of one of the forms of economic rule where it is presented as a concept of voluntary exchange. It is tied to trade, it's tied to commerce. One of the big misunderstandings about economics is the perception of economics as a system of power and dynamics, of production. While production is a part of this, it is not what economics is truly about. Because the reason why we produce something is because either some people must consume it or people must exchange it. Economy is tied to the concept of exchange. And the basic unit of all economic activity is the trade. Be it trade for services or trade for goods or trade for labor. There's some exchange. I give you this, I want something, you want something. And the only reason why this comes together is because both parties want something. They both either want or need something. And what happens here is that because an economic activity is understood as something voluntary. By voluntary, it means that there's no coercion involved. In other words, you can't deceive. If any deception is involved, then it's no longer a free trade, and it's something else. It moves from being economic activity to something coercive. Because why? Because the reason why parties are doing this is they have some need they want, and the other party has some need they want. Now, this does not require that both parties care for each other, like each other, or anything else. They only need to, they have something you want, and therefore, to you to get what you want from them voluntarily, not through taking it, but they will give it to you, is that you must have something they want in exchange. Thus, this activity of exchange is thus what? A situation where both parties must win, must get some benefit, must see some utility or positive benefit from the action. Otherwise, they would not engage in it. They would say no. And because there's no coercion involved, they can say no. So therefore, economic activity has this completely voluntaristic character. And also, thus the economic activity is this series, the economy as we call it, the economy, is nothing more than the aggregation of all the exchanges that occur over time in a place, among places. It's within a given community, within a given situation, all the forms of exchange. Now, we must distinguish a trade in an economic sense from gifts of care, benevolence. People, human beings, if they have relationships with other people and they have sympathy or some tie or emotion, they may offer things as you'd offer friends. But this is not the same as economics. This is something different. They may do so out of friendship, out of benevolence, or maybe even out of a sense of control. Okay, they think by giving this, the people will do what they want from them. Now, this has a similarity to economics, but this is slightly different, and therefore we need to be careful. Why? Because those things, there is a relationship. It is beyond one moment of time. There's a pattern of relationship, maybe even of dependency or something in that situation, where economic activity is simply just the parties are free, they're autonomous, they're not necessarily connected, they may be connected, they may not have connection, but they're engaged because they have utility. They're seeking utility, they're seeking some benefit from each other. Now, this differs from political understanding. Why? Because politics is similar to economics in this sense, that it's designed for mutual benefit of the parts, of the ruler and the ruled. In the other video, I distinguish between politics from despoticism. Despoticism, or the Greek word for this is despotic, A despotic is the rule over servants or slaves. Mastery, we'd say, could translate it as. Mastery, or thus, is not who benefits. The master benefits. The slave does not benefit. They may benefit accidentally or through a larger process, but the intention of the purpose of why they're serving, why they're serving, is for the benefit of the either the master or the household. And thus, this is not voluntary. No, one, it's not voluntary, because I mentioned the article, the other tape, that it couldn't be voluntary because what rational person would sacrifice their utility for the sake of another? Okay, maybe if you love them, but why would coercion then be necessary? If coercion is necessary for you to do this, then this is not something freely given. Love or care is freely given. Despotic rule is not thus freely given. It's done against the will of the actor, against the intent or the desire of the actor. Thus, we need to distinguish between political rule from despotic rule, because even though political rule is a balancing between voluntary actions that are done by people who are willing, political rule is distinguished from despotic rule, because political rule is the rule where the ruler and ruled should be relatively equal. There should be kind of a balance. Ideally, the political form is one where ruler and ruled there's an isonomy, an equality between them, that they share and rule. That the concept of political rule is that of the citizen, who is one who is ruled and ruled in turn. Although different political regimes may define who's citizen and who's not citizen differently, and there might be exclusion of people. But the idea is, amongst citizens there should be there should be a share of rule, and that therefore they should be sharing the benefit. Now, the danger comes from political rule is that because political rule is not completely voluntary like economic rule, but it's not completely despotic like despotic rule. In other words, it is not completely coercive. Political rule is both. It has its purpose is mutual benefit, therefore it's similar to economics, but it's dissimilar to economics because of it's more than one shot. Political rule has to be there's a community, there's a relationship, there's a duration to this. This is not just one time and it's over. It is over time. The good is not only an instantaneous good, it is a good that's to last and to benefit the parties over time. Thus, it's more complicated here. Also, economic activity is very easy to accomplish utility benefit. You only have two parties. Therefore, it's much easier to get a situation using a utility benefit situation where both parties win. Also, the difference in economics, it's much more complicated because the number of the parties who must win are much bigger, and therefore it is much harder to get a situation where all the parties can equally benefit. Therefore, maybe perfect equal benefit can never be achieved, but there could be proportional benefit. And therefore, as long as the parties perceive their benefits, the system works. When the people start perceiving that they're not benefiting, and this bothers them, therefore, the rule of a political system will eventually have to be coercive. Also, the reason why political rule differs from despotic rule, yes, it uses coercion, but often the coercion is done because the parties are not acting rationally or not looking at the reality of their true benefit. Parental rule has a coercive character to it, but the parental rules, the coercive character is done often for the sake of the child. That's because children don't really always know what's good for them. They often are mistaken. The parents will. Now, of course, there's always the case where parents can abuse their children, but this is not the norm. This is the violation of the norm. And therefore, we should understand any phenomenon not in terms of its violation or its a deviation from what the purpose of it, but for what its end and what its purpose is. So if thus political rules share something, there is this moment where sometimes there may be citizens who are either ignorant or not understanding of what needs to be done, that things are actually being done in their interest, but they don't perceive it as being done in their interest. They perceive they don't want it. Thus, sometimes, or they may be bad people, because there are people who are bad, and thus, in order to ensure that the others are not harmed by the bad, coercion is necessary. But the important crux here is the amount of coercion and the longevity of coercion. Political rule dissolves into despotic rule as the duration and use of coercion becomes more and more necessary. Once that you are no longer ruling a free people. The rule over free people is a rule over equals, a rule without coercion. People will abide by the benefit. They see the benefit. They see the good that is being done. They recognize it. They may not necessarily like it, but they will submit to it, or they will not rebel. When people start rebelling and or resisting, and that they resist coercion, then there's need for coercion. When a society, even a good society, that has to govern by massive coercion, this is not a society over free people. So therefore, the quality of the population you're ruling. If the people are a people who are used to being ruled, who have never been ruled by themselves or autonomous, therefore they may not understand how political rule operates. They see all rule as despotic rule, as all forms of mastery. Thus, political rule, thus, is this middle ground between economic rule, which is completely voluntary, and despotic rule that is completely involuntary. Now, this then leads us to a problem: the form of political rule. The form of political rule over time has changed. The political form, the place where political rule takes place. This entity changed over time because of what happened. The classical form of the political rule was the polis, or the Roman civitas, or we call it the city. The modern form of the political rule, or the form of political rule, is the state. Now, this distinction between polis and state, the distinction between the ancient political rule and the modern form of political rule, is one of the most fundamental distinctions. Because, and this I will address in another video. Thank you very much.